Everybody, my name is Dave Ashheim, and I am lucky to be here with Jim Anderson, and we're going to talk about fundraising secrets. We're going to talk a little bit about mobile, but mostly about social media. And my co-host is my parrot, who's about 4 feet away from me, but living at home, working at home means you're going to put up with dog sounds, and our parrot has been very noisy, so if you hear squawks, it's unlikely it's Jim. It's probably my parrot. Let me introduce Jim, and then we'll get this thing going. Jim is a well-known speaker. He has had an amazing career in the media world. He then migrated from the dark side over to the light side and has been helping nonprofits for the last many years at GoalBusters, the firm that he now works for. He's actively involved in AFP and is president of his chapter in Northern Arizona. And he has an amazing amount of stories. He's won all kinds of awards, and he is a great storyteller. So you guys are in for a treat. And Jim, I also did a little research on you, and did I read that you're up for the role as Tiger Jim in the next series that comes out next year? I heard that there's a chance that you might be the guy that's in the sequel.
There are certain requirements in my agreement with my agent that I am not allowed to discuss certain things.
We'll leave it as a rumor for now. But with that as a kickoff, I'll just tell you a second or two about what we do. I started a company called Engage Buy Sell about 14 years or so ago, and we have divisions around the country. One of them has to do with working with nonprofits. So we've got lots and lots of experience with mobile and with technology, and 4,000 clients or so. And the point of today's discussion is not about us. It's about picking the brain of Jim Sparky Anderson, and he can tell you why he has the name Sparky. And he has an amazing presentation. So why don't I see if we can just, Jim, go ahead and take over from me. If you want to just click that, see if you can take over, and we'll turn it over to you, and I'll interject every now and then.
All right. That sounds awesome. All right, everyone. Well, as you can see, I am broadcasting from the Fortress of Solitude, as many of us are these days. However, I have a long history of calling my house that. I've been traveling on the road since 1995 for business, and I do about 180 days a year these days. Currently, this is the longest period of time I have been home in close to 20 years, I think. But no, I'm not really in the Fortress of Solitude. In reality, my house looks a little bit more like this, because I travel so much that I've been collecting toilet paper for years. I do not have a shortage here. If anybody out there is really desperate, I can send you a couple of rolls. But we're gonna have some fun today. In fact, it's gonna be a bit of a ride. So we will jump right into this. Some of you have seen my photos. These photos are referred to as tiny planet photos. They're shot with a Theta 360 camera. In fact, most of these were shot with a Theta V. The new model out is the Theta Z1. I'm really excited to start working with it. But one of the reasons that I share these photos with you is they get a lot of attention. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today in this presentation. And that is, how do you get people to stop the scroll? I mean, seriously, that is your entire job with your social media, is getting people to slow down and stop scrolling, whether they're in Instagram or whether they're in Facebook, wherever they might be. That's all you're really trying to get them to do. So you don't have to use 360 photos to do it. There are a lot of interesting ways that you can get people to slow down. Through the course of this presentation, we're going to talk about a few different things. Hopefully these are things that are on your agenda that you'll find of interest. We'll try to discuss the importance of visual storytelling, think about how we make powerful emotional impact, evaluate visual storytelling, and look at some tools, some tips, some tactics. And I do have a great case study about a recent online fundraising campaign that we did 5-hour marathon telethon for Lowell Observatory. And we're going to talk about that a little bit as to how you can do online fundraising these days. So why do we have to get people to stop the scroll? Because people make snap judgments. You see the picture of the cute kitty? Some people are turned off by it. Some people love it and look for more and get lost looking for more kitty photos and video for the rest of the afternoon. But people make a decision extremely quickly, and they have a very short attention span. In fact, I have seen a few presenters recently share this fact, which came from which was promoted via an advertisement on television the course of the last couple of years. But I've been sharing this statistic for so long. I've been sharing it for so long that the human attention span has actually shrank. When I started sharing this, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that, the human attention span was 8 seconds, not 7. And at that, we were already 1 second shorter than the attention span of a goldfish. And in reality, you go back 5 years or so earlier, and humans had an attention span of 10 seconds. Thank you very much, social media. We are so bombarded with information these days. We have to make, we make choices very, very quickly. And often it's a visual or it is an image that will make us choose whether or not we pay any more attention or not. I don't know if anybody would recognize this fine young man. You might recognize him, the runner on the right. That's Malcolm Gladwell. If you don't know Malcolm, he has written a number of awesome books that I would encourage you to take a look at. The one that I'm bringing concepts from today is Blink. Other books that you might check out of his are The Tipping Point, teaches you a lot about the different roles in fundraising. Outliers, also, you know, how do certain people accomplish great things and others less so? I'll share a link later with a lot of free resources and things like that, and it will be a reading list. So Blink. We make decisions quickly, and sometimes we make good decisions and sometimes not so good. So those snap judgments that we make can serve us, but they can be a hindrance as well. So let me ask you, what would you do in the upcoming situation? Because I met this girl once. It was glorious New Orleans, but it wasn't Jackson Square. And it wasn't even night. I mean, it wasn't even day, it was night. And in fact, it was raining. But it wasn't on Bourbon Street. It was on a street much more like this. So I met this girl, and she's standing in a doorway, and she's gesturing, head down, gesturing with this t-shirt in her hand, this actual t-shirt. And she is ragged. You know, this was long enough ago that it wasn't probably opioids. She looked like she had been, she had suffered the ravages of meth addiction for a long time. Skinny and gaunt, wet in the rain, hair hanging in strings. And she's got this t-shirt. And she's gesturing with her head down, saying, t-shirt for $5. T-shirt for $5. I didn't know that's what she was saying because when I saw her, I was close to a block away. It's a dark street in New Orleans. You're scanning the horizon. And I can see this movement under this awning. And I see a couple walk past her and pretend she doesn't exist. And when I got closer, I was curious, what is she doing? And I asked her, I said, so you're selling that t-shirt for $5? And she said, yeah. My boyfriend was on work release today, and he told me not to come home until I brought home money. Yeah, it was this shirt. It was this shirt. OPP. New Orleans Parish Prison. And so I had to make a decision. I've stopped and I've engaged with this woman. She has to sell that shirt. So I bought it. I paid her more than the $5 she was looking for. So there we were on the street, and I do still think about her a lot. I had to wonder what it was like for her to come home, encounter that boyfriend when he was out on work release. I still wonder whether or not she ever got away. I hope she did. And I shared that story with you in part to show you a variety of emotional impact images. And so when you're trying to make decisions about the social media that you share, it can be really beneficial to you to think about the emotion that you want to impress upon someone more than an idea. But also when you're thinking about your social media, there's something that a lot of people, I believe, undervalue, and that is that your imagery, the content that you create, regardless of the digital platform that you're using, whether it is a social network or whether it is your website or your electronic communications, these can be used to support you in the donor cycle. Many of you have seen it, that cycle that goes from prospects to qualified prospects to making contact to cultivating a relationship to making an ask. Whether or not you get a no decides the next step. If you get that yes, then you've got stewardship, and then you go back into the cycle of cultivation. Acquisition is right up there at the top. Acquisition is how do you get people to notice you in the first place. Whenever you're using your social content, you can always create awareness. So the acquisition part is just getting people to slow down. It is creating that awareness, because nobody ever takes an action unless they have interest, and they can't have interest unless they have awareness. So remember, awareness drives interest, drives action. Always count on your social media to create awareness. Do it well, you'll generate interest. Do it really well, and you can get them to a point of action. But it's great with cultivation. There's so many different ways that you can continue to nurture that relationship with them, providing them content. We'll talk a little bit about what type of content in just a moment. You can use this to ask for people to take a specific action. That's where mobile comes in. When you're asking somebody to take an action, what better way for them to do it than on a mobile device, because that's where they are. The vast majority of their content is being consumed on a mobile device of some sort, whether a phone or a tablet or whatever, however they might be using it. That's where they already are, and this is a great opportunity for them to be able to take an action. But you don't want to be that person asking all the time. Then you have stewardship. How do you provide recognition? How do you provide reward for those people who have made contributions, who have taken an action? There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. Short videos are a great way to do it. In fact, let's hear a couple of words from Kid President.
20 things we should say more often. Number 20, thank you. And not just on Thanksgiving, every day. Number 19, excuse me. Number 18, here's a surprise corn dog that I bought you because you're my friend. There'll be more corn dogs and more happy people. This is a good idea. Corn dog for you, corn dog for you, corn dog for you. Number 17, I'm sorry. Number 16, I forgive you. Number 15, you can do it! But don't say it if it's something they can't do.
The key elements in what you share should be a blend of these three things: entertainment, information, and activation. So here's what those are. Should you be showing that personality and establishing your voice, identifying brand? Should you be informing, showing knowledge or expertise, or information regarding the sector, the cause that you work for, your community? Information is what people are going to want most of the time, but yes, they need diversion. Yes, they want some entertainment. I'm going to show you some examples of how we've accomplished that for a couple of other organizations in just a moment. This changes up though. These percentages change up. If you're around the holidays, you should probably entertain more than provide information. If you are doing some type of a fundraising operation, you should be asking for action more. So it totally depends on what your causes are. Bonus points to anybody who knows what that little Navajo girl is eating. What that is actually a Navajo delicacy, and created one of the most engaged with and shared, commented on, liked, etc. Facebook posts for KGHR Navajo Public Radio that we ever did. What that glorious looking, looks like a sausage, is definitely not a sausage. We were out on the Navajo reservation working with KGHR. It was Friday, so you go to the flea market. The achi is something that really took off with our followers on social media, because what that is an item that is created from a freshly butchered sheep. It is a section of sheep's colon stuffed with sheep fat, wrapped with sheep intestine, and then grilled until it's crispy on the outside and liquid on the inside. And I apologize greatly to my vegan and vegetarian friends for that description. But anyway, this is what it generated for us. You can see that plateau there. Actually, that looks more like a butte from out here in the canyon country where I live. But it looks like a butte, but I refer to that as the achi butte. You can see what our normal reach was with social media, but because that item took people home, because it was something that people engaged with, that reminded them of family and friends. They teased people, those who loved it. They teased those who hated it. They talked about grandma and family and shared it extensively. And then we settled back into the type of reach that we normally have. So if you have something that really hits hard and you get this great bump, recognize that what you see is probably what we saw here. We had a relatively flat line level going into the posting of this, and coming out of it, we had a sustained increase in engagement for a while, took a dip, probably some holiday or break, and then came back at a little higher than what we were previously. So there are ways to create really good content to engage with, to get people to engage with it more. I'm going to skip this video and go back to that point of what are you trying to make people feel when you're posting your digital content. You want them to have specific impressions, specific relationship, and these are the types of words that I believe being expressed when people were sharing that achi post. But there are definitely other things as well that you might be striving for. What do you want people to feel? Do you want to create some anxiety? Do you want to create cognitive dissonance for them? A lot of different ways you can try to get people to interact with you. Let me jump out of this one for a minute and show you a couple of quick examples. So KGHR that I was sharing with you a minute ago, you can see that they have a very distinct style. Anytime that I'm traveling is when I'm in Toronto. I will collect photos when I see something that relates to Indigenous causes or people. You always want to show faces as much as possible. The more you can show faces, the more people are going to engage with you. If you can get elders, or in this case, veterans, if that is something that is related to your cause, people have strong feelings and emotional impact. And down there you can see our achi. The photo down in the lower center is the Gathering of Nations, the largest tribal powwow in the country. Very different, though, than the feel that we have for Border Radio, another station that we've been outsourced development for 14 years at this point. And when you're looking at what we do for them, I want to spot out here and take you to a specific promotion that we did. This promotion was basically a combination Easter egg hunt slash, it was a combination Easter egg hunt slash social media campaign. So what we did is we took records that were painted in different ways and we hid them around the community. And by hid, I mean we placed them in really easy to find locations and encourage people that when you find them, take a photo, tag us in it, and let us and post it, and we'll enter you into a contest. And we had prizes. Everybody who entered won. But people liked this. And one of the things when you're doing a social media campaign of this sort is you need to make sure that you have regular content. So you'll see a lot of these photos with people's faces. Those were real photos where people found these found the records and they posted their photo. Some of them that you see that don't have people in them, those were my stock photos. I went around and took photos in locations where you could find the records or other interesting locations, and I made sure that I had a stock of them so that I could pepper them in if things were slow during the competition. So I would drop them in. If I haven't had a couple of submissions in a day or something like that, you would see that I would put some more stuff in. So, and that's the governor of Arizona actually holding one with our news director, Luke Gum. But you can see that we got a lot of people engaged in the community, had a lot of fun with this thing, and it generated some strong interest for us. So there's a couple of examples of Instagram accounts. Let me though show you a real example of online fundraising that had a strong social media component as well. And that was recently something that Lowell Observatory put together. They did this promotion, or they did a fundraising campaign. It was the first one they'd ever done. And that fundraising campaign was this Shoot for the Moon, which was held during the pink supermoon a couple of weeks ago. On average, those 20,000 views were about 250 to 300 people at a time over the course of the 5 hours. And so something to keep in mind is that if you're doing an online fundraiser, be redundant with your appeals, because much like regular television or regular radio, people have short attention spans and they tune in for a short amount of time, then they're going to tune out and move on. They'll watch one segment and they'll move on. So make sure that when you're doing your appeals, you might think you've said the same thing 10 times, but odds are most people have only heard it once, if they've heard it at all. So don't be afraid to be redundant. The campaign itself raised less than $30,000, which was great by our account. We had no idea how much it was going to raise. So because of that, 30 or less than, or over 20, under 30, I'm not sure what the final numbers were. That was a good number for us. But what was—
Hey Jim, oh, go ahead, Jim. There's an interesting question. So finish your point, and then we'll go to the question that we've got.
That's pretty much where I was going to wrap up, is show this video. You can see that it had 71,000 views, and that is the instructional what is a supermoon. And that ran about a week before we actually did the fundraiser, which we had 20,000 views. Now, we had a couple of things that worked out to our benefit. One of them was that because of our social media promotion, because of that, of having this intro video out early, CNET picked this up and they distributed it to their email list in the form of, here's a way to watch the supermoon. And so we did a live event of the supermoon coming up, and that 5 hours, the first half of it was STEM education for elementary school children and middle school children. The second half is all about the supermoon and watching the supermoon rise and talking to historians about the significance of the moon and cultural experts, about moon and media, and as well as all the really cool science stuff. But for us to have 70,000 people that watched the preview and had 20,000 people that watched some of the fundraiser, that was really powerful. And the reason that we got that level of engagement is because of the social media push early, and because we had that extra viral push, which was because CNET saw it and picked it up. You may not be able to duplicate CNET picking it up, but you can probably duplicate local media picking up your fundraiser or things like that if you're doing something cool and creative. So with that, I'm going to stop the screen share and come back over and we can address some of those questions, Dave.
Why don't we look at the one from Paul? That's a really interesting point, I think, about trying to blend entertainment with information, and we see that on news, fake news. We see it all over. What's your feel for how much to push it for nonprofits in the social media world? How much to push that point that Paul is asking for?
No, I think Paul's right. Much like I said, during a holiday, you want to have more entertainment. But one of the things that holidays and our current conditions share are a lot of people at home with time on their hands. So yes, I think you should be boosting up your entertainment options. But that doesn't mean that if you're going to be posting something, you can't remember or you can't remind people that they can support your organization as well. Don't do it with every post, but where appropriate, remind them of how they might be able to support you. It can be as easy as adding a URL on the bottom of a photo or something like that, or having, if you're doing a video, just have somebody mention it in the video. But yeah, you should be entertaining more. I know that that's what we've been practicing with our news, with the news station that I mentioned, that station where you saw all the records. There's two stations there. One is a music service, one is a news service. With the news service, we're still much heavier information because there's so much people want to know, and there's so many things that are moving more quickly. But the music service is almost pure entertainment at this point.
Giving Tuesday is coming up in May. I think the first time I've ever heard that they're doing that again. What's your recommendation for the type of message, whether it's light, it's heavy, make the request for a mobile gift, don't make the request? Everybody, I think, on this call, all a couple hundred of us, are thinking, when do we start that, and how do I frame it? What's your suggestions for that?
There are a lot of people that are looking for guidance as to how to ask, and I believe that was a lot of the motivation of creating this this additional Giving Tuesday now, I think. And so the nature of the message is going to be totally dependent upon the nature of the organization. There are some organizations that have to stay straight to mission, remind people of how vitally important what you do is. A word of caution, though, to some organizations who I have heard team members say, you know, we're an arts organization. We're not an essential service. We shouldn't be asking right now. If you were worth supporting before the conditions with the coronavirus, if you were worth supporting before that, you are worth supporting now. Don't sell yourself short. A real opportunity to support or to give people that chance to support you. If they loved you before, they love you now. But it's up to you to remind them that that the services that you provide are going to be equally important, and in many cases more important than they may have been prior to these conditions of shutdown across the nation.
That coincides with a speaker we had a week or two ago, Tammy Blackburn from San Diego State University, and she was saying the same thing. And the people on the audience, I think they were a little surprised that she was making the point. If there's ever a time that you need to support your nonprofit, now is the time, because the people all of you are serving need your help more today than ever before. And so I think your message is resounding well. I've shared my screen, and you can just see some examples of how we've seen some of our clients. Some of these are made up and some of these are real, but you can see these are some examples of some Instagram posts and Facebook posts where, if you're wondering how you can help, like on the top right, you can make a donation by texting in. So I totally agree with you, Jim. This is not the time to soft sell the need for all of for funding for your services. Yeah. Any questions from the, keep the questions coming in, everybody, because Jim and I are welcome to answer your questions too. You were going to say, Jim?
I was just going to mention, because of working with the presentation, I haven't had a chance to monitor those questions myself. So if there are any that you want to share, or if you have any of your own, it'd be a great time to address those.
Let's just touch upon mobile and its role as it pertains to social media. You travel not only domestically, but you travel all over the world. Where are other countries as it relates to using mobiles for engagement and joining and giving and buying compared to the United States? And any recommendations for people on the call today?
Well, I would encourage, I guess the quick recommendation would be, if you're not giving people an opportunity to give quickly via mobile, you're probably missing the boat. We are way behind in the US, behind a lot of the developed countries as to what they're doing with mobile. Granted, in many of these countries, internet access is not always going to be readily prevalent. Especially in the lesser developed countries, a lot of the Asian countries and other European countries and other places, South America, Africa, etc. The phone is going to be your internet. The phone is going to be your source of connection to everything. And I think that's one of the reasons that internationally mobile is so much a large part of fundraising. Outside of the U.S., they don't talk about nonprofits. We call these type of organizations non-governmental organizations, NGOs, simply meaning that they are private sector that are doing the support for the communities. One in particular that I'm not sure. Dave, have you heard of the One Foundation?
I have heard of it. Yeah, I can't remember the context, but I just read something about them recently.
Yeah, that's Jet Li's foundation.
Yeah.
The actor and martial arts expert, Jet Li. Um, in fact, he did a movie called The One. But the One Foundation, we got to meet, Alice Ferris and I, we were at the International Fundraising Congress, which is put on by the Resource Alliance out of London. And we were at the IFC Asia a couple of years ago in Bangkok and had an opportunity to meet the CEO, I guess, of that organization. And he was explaining to us, when I'm at these conferences, I always have to try to figure out what's scalable, what works for one size organization, can it work for another? Because Dave, they have 700,000 monthly donors. 700,000 monthly
Unbelievable.
donors.
Wow.
And they are almost all mobile donors. And
right.
these donations are tiny. They in many cases are a fraction of a yuan, a fraction of a cent. But there's 700,000 of them. So they really add up. And so that's something to think about when you're doing your own mobile campaign. How much are you asking for? Are you asking for your traditional $100, $50, $25? If you want people to participate, you might want to be able to accept smaller donations. Figure out what your cost per processing donation is. Try to stay above that. But also understand that even if you were taking a donation that is a high percentage cost per dollar raise, even if you're there, understand that not everybody's going to give you that minimum. Many people will give you a substantially larger amount, but by being able to take smaller donations, you're letting those donors know that it doesn't matter how much you contribute if you can just do something. And that first opportunity, that first gift they give you is going to set them on the path of what their lifetime value is to your organization. So think about them in terms of lifetime value, not just size of most recent gift.
Well, some of these examples on the screen, you can see a couple different ones. There's two basic ways people can raise money using phones. One is where the charge hits their cell phone bill, and we've all seen that with the Red Cross and the American Cancer Society. That's a service that's available to most charities in the country. And then the other one is people text in and they get a link, and that link can take them to your donation page. So I saw an interesting comment here, Jim, about from our Hartzog near the end here that said, we have a building fund and endowment fund, but we halted that to raise money for patrons and volunteers in need. Jill, why don't you answer and address that last question? What are your thoughts on alternating asks to keep them all relevant and to keep them straight? Is that a good idea or a bad idea, or is it a free-for-all now because we're in this coronavirus scare?
Well, I would say, like so many things in life, the answer is going to be it depends. I think in this situation, though, there's no problem with mixing up or changing a campaign. People expect there to be course corrections. They expect people to try to be nimble or agile in how they address things. One of the many coronavirus catchwords is pivot. They expect you to pivot from one thing to another. So I wouldn't be terribly concerned about changing one campaign to another, but try to be logical about how you're doing it. And also keep in mind that you can be doing multiple campaigns at the same time for different issues on different channels. Your campaign here, raising money to help patrons and volunteers in need, maybe that's something that is appropriate across all channels. Maybe it's more appropriate for social. Maybe your capital campaign, or excuse me, building the fund for the endowment, maybe that's something that's more traditional, direct mail and electronic channels. I think it's a blend. I think you and your team need to get together, discuss who your donors are, what your goals are for them that they can help you with, and then make the decisions as to where your energies are best spent.
We had a question earlier, Jim, that mentioned many of the people that these charities are fundraising from are under tremendous stress themselves. Should the charity then ease off and not ask for funds, or you had just said it's probably worthwhile going ahead and making the ask people are not going to be upset that they're getting the ask? Or how do you balance that if your constituents are not wealthy constituents that have a lot of extra money? Should you delay the ask or just go ahead and participate in Giving Tuesday and come up with something, perhaps a low bar to make that ask?
In most circumstances, and there are probably exceptions, but I think in most circumstances, yes, you should participate in asking, whether it be Giving Tuesday or some other format. But I think something that is really relevant to consider is how you ask. And if in the course of your ask, can you give people permission not to give? If you ask them and make them feel guilty and they can't give, that hurts, that stings. But if you give them an out and let them know that it's okay not to give, then you've eliminated that guilt for them. And then that it doesn't cause them any negative feelings of association with your organization. I'll give you an example. I mentioned working with a couple of radio stations. We work with a lot of public media and public television. Many of you have seen Alice Ferris on PBS. She just shot 2 more national specials for her. You'll see her asking for your support. And insider, a little inside baseball here, she shot it in a garage in Chandler in front of a green screen because all the studios are shut down. But when we were in a on-air pledge drive when the coronavirus was just starting to shut down communities, and it hadn't happened yet where we were in Yuma, Arizona. And when we would make an appeal regularly, a few times an hour, we would say, if you are someone who is currently financially impacted or you are uncertain about your resources because of what's going on, please do not give. Please take care of yourself first. Please take care of your family first and your friends first. But we know that some of you still have the ability to. And if you do, here's an opportunity for you to support this station, which is so important to so many, and some of whom can't support now. And what happened, Dave? We got fewer gifts, but they were so much bigger than what we used to get. We still did really well because the people who could give recognized. We had reminded them of the importance for them to support for those who can't, and they came through.
Well, and it's like I hearken back to this webinar a week or so ago. Tammy was saying from San Diego State that they know that their audience, which are students and parents, are probably many of them struggling. So they came up with a very small dollar amount. I think it was $15. And if you texted in SDSU to a certain short code, $15 would hit your cell phone bill. Well, what they found out is thousands of people are willing to give $15. They're not willing to give $100 right now because that's just too much. And they checked their records, probably 70 to 80% are people that have never given before. So all of a sudden, to your point about taking the first step down the giving path, they now feel much more connected to San Diego State, that they gave $15, and hopefully they can be solicited from in the future for maybe larger gifts.
Absolutely. Yeah, we saw it in other organizations that we work with as well. We mentioned that, well, the Lowell Observatory example. We got a $5,000 matching gift offer from somebody who had never given more than about, I think, $1,000 a year before. And we sent out an email, let them know what we were trying to do with, sent out an email to a select group in our list for Lowell, and let them know what we were trying to do and ask if there were people who would like to support it through a matching contribution. And so this person just jumped into a major donor category. Well, and that's a major donor for them. For some organizations, a major donor is $100.
That's right.
The native stations that we work with, $100 is a big deal. For some organizations, that $100 is just a drop in the bucket. At the native stations, it fills the whole bucket. But
that's right.
But we saw it. We saw it with Lowell, and we saw it with other clients that they might not be getting as many gifts. They are getting a lot of new people who are thinking, this is something that's important to me, and they're adding it to what they can give, and they're getting a lot of larger gifts or repeat gifts. That was something else that we saw. was a lot of repeat gifts. Somebody who's already given, which gave what they normally do each year, gave again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because we asked.
Well, and we're coming up to the top of the hour, so let me do a little wrap up, and then I'll let you wrap it up too, Jim. We will email everybody this presentation. Some of you, we don't have your email, so in the chat window, if you want info from Jim on his wonderful consulting service, you see his name and email, and as I said, we're going to send that off to you. Put your email in the chat window, everybody, and then we'll have it for sure. And if you want to know more about our mobile giving or our text messaging services, just once again, drop your name and your email in that, and we will automatically send you information out. If I did a little recap, I think what we're saying, Jim, is especially with Giving Tuesday coming up, and with the power of social media bringing you emotionally to take an action, use social media and use the tools that you're describing here with the visual aspects, as well as do something. I would suggest add a call to action to text in and donate, but add some call to action. What are the other 3 or 4 takeaways, Jim, that you want people to know about before we leave the webinar?
Yeah, the things to take away is that, yes, you can be fundraising now. And you can do effective virtual fundraising. And keep in mind that we're not going back to the same world we left a month ago. Things are never going to be the same. There are going to be a lot of things that we're learning now, which we should have been doing years ago, that we better keep doing on the other side. And one of them is using distance education. One of them is using, we're going to stop calling it virtual. I think we should stop calling it virtual now. This is just distance learning. This is just a webinar or electronic training. This is not new. It's just new to some of us who haven't used it before. And so take these skills, hone them, and continue to make them a part of what you're doing going forward. And back to the virtual storytelling, if you want to stop the scroll, use good visuals, good video, good photos, because video creates more engagement, photos create more reach typically.
And Jim, how about a shameless plug for your organization? You've been gracious in giving us so much insight into what you know. What are the circumstances and types of organizations that you folks work with? And we have the contact info here, but if somebody's saying, man, I could really use some help in X, what are those things? And then they can reach out to you if they would like to talk to you further.
I think what I would share first is, let me give everybody another free gift, or I guess scores or hundreds of free gifts. On our website, there is a free resources page, free fundraising resources and other resources. We do not ask for your email. We just want you to take it and use it and support your organization. We believe firmly in case, copy and steal everything, and we want to share that with you as well. In fact, you'll find forms, you'll find the reading list that I talked about, you'll find links to all kinds of presentations. If you want to see this presentation in the manner it was intended, you can simply Google GoalBusters Prezi. GoalBusters Prezi will get you to these presentations. You can also Google GoalBusters Haiku. Haiku is another presentation format. You'll find 100 presentations between those two sites. But on the free resources page, it's easy. It's goalbusters.net/free. Goalbusters.net/free. And you can take all these resources. In terms of what we do, we typically share with people that we can teach you to fish, we can show you where the fish are, or we can fish for you. The fishing for you is that for a limited number of clients, we provide outsourced development where we are actually boots on the ground doing the work. That's a very select few clients. It's something that we believe we have to feel passionately to work with any organization. If we wouldn't financially support it, we don't take them on as a client. But the teach you to fish, that is That is the training and education that we provide through presentations and workshops and things like that. And then to show you where the fish are, or where the fish are, that's planning. That's doing strategic plans and development plans and things like that. We do capital campaigns. We're a full service agency. We work predominantly with smaller and mid-sized shops, but we work with some of the largest as well. We generally become good friends with our clients because we start out with that as a premise, that we will only work with people we like for causes that we believe in.
I think that's a great mission, and you work for a great organization, Jim. So thank you, everybody. And we'll send you the presentation tomorrow. We'll leave the chat window open if you want to ask more questions. And put your email in there, and Jim and I will send you stuff about what we learned today, and maybe you could learn that, use that in Giving Tuesday or the next few months. So with that, we'll officially wrap it up. And thank you so much, Jim, for participating and for being a great guy and an example of social media in action. So it's fantastic.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.